Is the US going to have its dollar backed by gold? Well, the hints are emerging now from various people. For example, Judy Shelton, who was a former economic advisor to Trump, has been hinting that this quantitative easing, this printing has to stop. And one way to do that is to start issuing perhaps US Treasury bills that are convertible to gold upon maturity. This is something like a counter to what China is doing with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Iran, and I'll have a different monologue on that as to how that trade is being planned and executed. So she's saying that, well, if you do that, then the US Treasury bills will suddenly start getting a lot more respect. By the way, I think every month the US Treasury bill auctions up to $150 billion. Now, if those are not bought by anyone, then what happens? Well, this is something that we'll be touching on another monologue where we talk about how much debt of United States is carried by other countries. And the answers will surprise you there. But let's get back to US Treasury and how it is losing ground because other countries don't appear to be buying those bonds. Well, you also know that the Genius Act allows stable coins to start backing themselves up against the US Treasury by buying the US Treasury so that they can say, look, if other countries are not willing to buy these bonds, we will buy these bonds. Like, for example, Tether is one company, and then there are other companies, including one called USD1, which is another stable coin that the Trump family has a majority stake in, WLF, if I remember correctly. That's the one that does business with Pakistan's crypto consortium or whatever you call that thing. All that stuff is that company that also has a stable coin called USD1. So stable coin is one counterbalance for people to make it attractive to buy US Treasury bonds. Also, the fact that if US starts giving US Treasury bonds, maybe one small portion, like 10% of the, remember I told you 150 billion that gets auctioned every month, they say 15 billion of that is convertible upon maturity to gold, that might evince a lot of interest. I'm just saying. So this is what Judy Shelton said. As a former economic advisor, one has to take her word seriously. Also, recently, Donald Trump Jr., the son of Donald Trump, endorsed a Birch gold company. And this is a company that essentially sells gold bars. And you can see that ad also. So there are some hints coming here and there that perhaps Trump administration is leaning towards having a US dollar backed by gold. Is it going to be the complete US dollar or just the domestic US dollar that will do that and an international US dollar which will be fiat based? All that and more in this infographic. I'm sorry to take so long to come to the point. I had to set the context, which is what I'm doing. And now let's take a look at the infographic.
Who was Parashurama, who led a life of devotion, dedication and daring? Why did he take birth on the earth? Was it to eradicate corrupt Kshatriya rulers who had become tyrannical and oppressive, or was it to bestow daya for the needy?
So, gold standard debate. What is really going on? Is it a debate that says that we need to go to the gold standard, or are they saying that there is a focus on gold standard science? It is something like a federal research principles for fiscal discipline and so on and so forth, but not a gold-backed dollar signal. So these are all things that people are talking, but once the Trump administration started talking about gold standard science, what happened? First of all, they said that this is needed for scientific rigor, reproducibility, transparency, and freedom from conflicts of interest. The conclusion is this is just a scientific methodology, not a monetary policy initiative to back the US dollar with gold. So like I said, US Treasury bonds, now US dollar, these are all being talked about. But then what did it do to the market? In the market, gold price has started surging. It in fact crossed $4,000 an ounce. And these are all some of the things which are being given as a reason. Political uncertainty and the threat of large-scale tariffs which create inflation/deficit concerns led to investors fleeing to gold, which is a neutral body and which can be always monetized at a later date. Then there's also the other thing that there is going to be a gold standard because there has been an inward movement of gold. So if you take a look at the gold COMEX market in United States, there was a surge in gold inventories in 2024 and early 2025, but this was primarily driven by, it is believed, trade risk management, and it is not a government reserve increase. For example, in Q3 2024, 150 tons came into US. Q4 2024, initial inflow was 350 tons. In Q1 2025, it was at a peak of 500 plus tons. The root cause given was that traders were relocating from major hubs such as London, Switzerland, to the US to avoid potential future import tariffs on bullion, because people are thinking that any gold related stuff could also attract tariffs by the United States. But it started even before Trump election was confirmed that Trump was going to be the next president. So you guess it, guys. I mean, I think the US dollar issue is something that has been going on for some time. It has nothing to do with who is the president. So now the other thing that is being talked about, more and more whispers, some opinion papers, that should we have a dual dollar system? The concept of splitting the dollar into a domestic gold-backed version and an international fiat version. And the reason you have to split it is because there is not enough gold to support the entire supply of dollars in the world. So what US want to do is, there is a proposal to have a domestic dollar which is going to be backed by gold reserves, and an international dollar which is the same as before, meaning it's fiat currency backed by full faith and credit of the United States government. This will continue to be world's primary reserve and trade currency, while if you happen to have dollars in the United States, those will of course attract more of a exchange rate. In other words, outside dollar versus inside dollar itself might have a disparity because the US internal dollar would be backed by gold. So these are all things that are doing the rounds, but it's something that needs to be kept in mind, that people in the positions of power and policy making are beginning to talk about having some fiscal responsibility for the dollar. And one way to do that is, of course, to split the dollar into two: an internal dollar inside the United States that is backed by gold, and an external dollar which continues to be what it is today. Well, if you happen to have assets inside US, maybe those will be gold backed. And if you don't happen to have dollars inside the United States, like in a US bank or a US mutual fund, then that might be treated like international US dollar. I don't know the exact rules, but certainly a lot of things are happening. The US is concerned that some of their monthly treasury bond auctions might not be bought. Thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. Namaskar.